Thank you very much. A talk from someone like me expands to fill the time available for its completion. I have distorted Peter principle because I'm well aware of my limitations. I'm a journalist. A journalist is everything by starts and nothing long. Profession is inherently superficial. Therefore, I'm intimidated when you place me in the same gallery as Prabhat just now and Ramada Thapar and others, because I am humbled by their erudition and their focus on a subject. Yes, having been in the business for so many years, one does retain I'll give you an example. I was reminded that there was a seminar today because I had been alerted a month ago. Last night, I was writing my column on Ukraine. Now, what has Ukraine got to do with India, you might ask? Well, if I were to twist it around, there is a great connection, and I shall come to that. Before that, my column was on Boris Johnson's boozy party is at number 10, and therefore his imminent departure from the gaddi of the Prime Minister. Does that have anything to do with India? You know, you'd be surprised how, yes, the two things can be linked. And let me come to Ukraine first. I'm just thinking on my feet, as it were. Yesterday, day before yesterday, I read front page story that India is not saying anything on the Ukraine crisis because if it came out against the Russians, then the Russians will get closer to the Chinese, who we don't like. Now that was front page Indian Express, 3-column headline in Delhi. Now, before we get to the absurdity of it, let me give you another. August of 15, when the Americans were leaving Afghanistan, just when the Americans left, so did we. All the other embassies were opened except our embassy, because we had thrown our lot entirely with Ghani, Ashraf Ghani's government, who was a protege, or in fact, a puppet of the Americans during their last years of occupation. We left because we were with them. Today, China was also involved there. China has the border with Afghanistan. But here, we are hesitating. We are not doing the Americans' bidding. So what does that show to you? That gives you a little clue to day after tomorrow. We are maybe, possibly easing ourselves out of the American lap, as it were. Boris Johnson What has this boozy party got to do with India? Let me tell you, give you the link. United States of America and Great Britain both have at the moment leaders who are virtually at the edge of their seats. I mean, they have found the Prime Minister. I shouldn't be saying it. I have the courage to say it only because I am quoting British newspapers. British newspapers call him a liar. British newspapers call him unreliable. British newspapers call him the sorts of names that even I hesitate from an adjective that I would use against him. And he was found with a party during pandemic when the rest of the country was asked to stay at home, social distancing, masks, all the restraints. A party of 40 or more was being organized on the lawns of number 10, and there's a subject of a great inquiry. In America, you have a president who already, where Trump has caught up with him and is 0.1% behind him in the ratings, where they are talking of, Economist is mentioning the term like civil war conditions, where pandemic is running rampant, where 7% inflation is gnawing at the presidency because the midterm elections are coming. Now, why have the people selected these two countries? Now, both these countries had rank winners as candidates before their respective elections. If you read the newspapers earlier, you find that Jeremy Corbyn was the most popular man in British politics just a few months before the elections. Likewise, for 2 terms running, Bernie Sanders was the most popular. This is not me, this is American data. This is British data. What I'm quoting is from The Guardian for Boris Johnson and from Fox News of all the papers for Sanders. Sanders was the most popular man. But the establishments, the British and the American, the Western establishment, they did not want anybody, because don't forget, the soul of McCarthyism still lives there. Sanders was considered something of a socialist. Socialist is very close to communist, and communist is anathema because Venezuela Chavez was a communist. Same thing here. What was against Jeremy Corbyn? He was a friend of Chavez of Venezuela. Charges against him were that he was anti-Semitic, which he was not. All the studies showed, there's a book that came out, and now people are writing. Why am I giving you these examples? Examples I'm giving you that if we have the system that we have at the moment, it is people have been reduced to, have been manipulated into pressing buttons, into pushing papers in the ballot boxes. Then before that, the big business, the corporates take over. The corporates, friends, control all the spaces of the media, more or less. A few Ravish Kumars and so on here and there. All the spaces are controlled by the corporates. The corporates have a deal with the powers that are coming in or the powers that are there. What is the deal? We will give you complete, total free run of media support. You tilt the policy on this issue and that issue for us. That is how our current democracy, the crisis of democracy, crisis of electoral democracy everywhere. And at the bottom of it, of course, is the economy, which Professor Patnaik was talking about. Now, let me move away from this little image, which is a spontaneous. This is what journalists, this is the problem of us in our profession. I just went back to the things I had written day before yesterday. Afghanistan. Let us take the cutoff date of Afghanistan as the Saur Revolution of 1978. Saur is April. April 6th, the revolution took place, which brought the government of Nur Muhammad Taraki, a communist. There were two communist parties of Afghanistan, the Parcham and the Khalq. The Khalq was more like the CPI, and the Parcham was more like the CPM. And Taraki became the communist prime minister. I was there for his first press conference. Now, how did that happen? That happened because of a completely botched up effort of SAVAK, which is the Shah's of Iran's intelligence agency, which wanted to snuff out all the left elements around President Dawood, with whom himself the Americans were not very comfortable. He was surrounded by leftists, and therefore a plan was hatched that the left would be eliminated physically, and that's it. The plan got leaked. What happened? A man called Mir Akbar Khaybar of the Parcham party, who was a trade union leader, he got murdered, and the story leaked that some kind of a SAVAK, a secret operation is on. The communists got wind of it. They went into the presidential palace, killed Dawood and all his paraphernalia, and that is how the communists came to power. The minute they came to power, my God, there was, communism is right there in Afghanistan. So antibodies began to work, and the CIA got very active. And by 1979 December, things were bad enough for one of the, I think it was Barbara Karmal, who in fact invited the Russians. Russian troops rolled in. Oh, that is the beginning. That is the beginning of all our goals. How Russians have got in, so the Russians have to be evicted. How? I remember Mr. Brzezinski right there, gone to Pakistan, and he said, I mean, that somehow that has to be rolled back. A scheme was formed. What was the scheme? Americans would train them, Saudis would spend the money, and Pakistani territory and specialization, and therefore Mujahideen. Remember terrorism? We are talking about terrorism. It was manufactured in Afghanistan by way of the Mujahideen. And the Mujahideen were given these Stinger missiles by the Americans. Pakistan opened 175 odd madrasas in one little stretch, thousands all over the place. Madrasas on the Afghan-Pakistan border, on the Pakistani side, which became hatcheries for the kind of Islam that would there were three interests involved. Let me give you those three interests. The interests were the Americans wanted the Soviets out. Simple. The Saudis, who were putting in all the money, Naif was then the crown prince, all the money and direction. They had a bigger interest. In 1978 itself, 79, the Iranian revolution had brought the Ayatollahs to power. My God, the Shias had come to power there. So who have a long border with Afghanistan. So if we can create a Wahhabized Islam in Afghanistan, that will act as a bulwark against the Shia Iran. That was the Saudi interest. What was Ziaul Haq's interest? Ziaul Haq said, my God, here is my chance. Nizam-e-Mustafa, this composite culture that you talk about, this was a big irritant. So long as we keep talking about the composite culture, the subcontinent, Pakistan, would always be ensnared by this concept, this overarching concept. We have to wrench ourselves away from whatever composite culture there is in us. We have to Arabize. We have to look west. Islam was going to be Arabized. This was the plan. And of course, what happened? This is a very long story. Let me bring you up to date. Fast forward to present times. When Americans moved in 20 years ago, they had been there for much before that. First, they thought, you will be surprised, the similarities between Afghanistan and Ukraine. The other one was that at that time, Unicol, a big company, had a plan to bring gas from Turkmenistan via Afghanistan, Pakistan to India. TAPI, it was called. TAPI. Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Americans, it was an American company. America is run by big conglomerates. And so therefore, we shall, in about the 90s, we shall allow the Taliban to overrun Afghanistan, to control Afghanistan, and we, the Americans, shall control them. What happened? Why did it not happen? A lady called Christiana Manpur turned up in Kabul because there was such huge American interest. She saw the Taliban treating the women rather shabbily. So she wrote 2 or 3 stories about, there were shows on it, a serial on American television, CNN. I remember I was with Richard Holbrooke in Delhi, and he had got a call here in Delhi. We were talking at some function. He got a call from, as he was the Deputy Secretary of State and Ambassador to the UN for the Clinton administration. He came to me, he said, it's all over. I said, what is over? The Taliban, as an American interest, have been dismissed because Christian has done these stories about women being maltreated and shabbily treated in Pakistan. So that is how that went. Then the Americans directly came in. For 20 years, they said they were training the army. When they left, can you believe it? The richest country in the world remained in occupation of Afghanistan for 20 years. And when it left, we are told that 23 million people are on the verge of starvation. 20 years of American occupation. What were you doing there? Oh, the army. We actually trained the army rather badly. They should have been trained differently. They are different people. Where is that 300,000 army? Where are those arms? But we were with them at that time. Now, the whole dynamics in South Asia is changing. Imagine yourself with a tennis racket. The guts of the racket here in the middle. This is where Afghanistan is, and this is where the Americans were. The rim is Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, a little interior, China, Russia, and Kyrgyzstan. Now while the Americans were here in the middle, we were comfortable. But now that the Americans have got do samandar udhar, beyond 2 oceans, now we are here. We have no alternative but to make peace in this. We have no alternative. Mark my word, on this seminar, once these elections end, already things have started happening. You will have a completely new dynamics will be initiated. There is no alternative. But the problem is one. Supposing it involves, to just as a final thing, let me show you the problem of South Asia in 2 little ops of mine. These are homemade ops. I call it the problem of the interlocking triangles. The problem of the interlocking triangles. What is the problem? We have a very stout and a very old caste structure. The caste structure is, you've got the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and then as you go down, it becomes wider and wider like this. This was exposed to notions of democracy, equity, social justice, upward mobility. So it became a little wobbly. Came VP Singh, he put a boulder in the pond, and tsunami happened. And the counter tsunami, which was the Rath Yatra, and you had the Mandal, Kamandal, that spiral is at its peak now. What was the Kamandal? The Kamandal was this second triangle. Let me show you this triangle. If you can tell it, this is, according to me, the solution. India, this triangle, India, Pakistan, Hindu, Muslim, New Delhi, Srinagar. This is one triangle. This is one complex of issues. You touch any one side of this triangle and the other 2 are immediately affected, as happens in geometry. Supposing anyone who says that he's charging off to Pakistan, to Kashmir to solve the problem, he's telling a lie, because he cannot. You will have to bring in Pakistan somewhere, willy-nilly, despite the bifurcation. You will have to bring in Pakistan. Once you bring in Pakistan, this here, this line will collapse. Hindu-Muslim temperatures will come down. Mark my word. Hindu-Muslim temperatures will come down. If they come down, what happens to Hindu consolidation, which is how it happens to this consolidation then. So this is the trap that we are in. This is the trap, which I call the interlocking triangles. These two triangles are interlocked. The problem is not, and one day, any day, we open up with Pakistan, we open up a little bit. Very interesting. I gave you the story that India cannot be seen to be supporting Americans on Ukraine because otherwise Russia will get closer, as if we would have they already are like this, Russians and in every possible way. This is the story in Indian Express. Before that, I read, now listen to this. India-China trade exceeds 136 billion, the highest trade we've ever had with China. So what is going on? There's something else is happening here, and something else that There is something that is being played out in the political arena, in the social arena, and there's something else has been going on quietly. And that reality can very easily assert itself too. Finally, on the current problems, remember, this is my humble formulation. I have just written a play. It's called The Muslim Vanishes. I'm not propagating the book. It has just come out by Penguin. It is already on the, it's done well. It's done very well. Read it. What is the theme? Theme is this. Very simple, which we have not been able to decipher. Communalism in India has political patronage. Communalism in India has political patronage. Caste in India has long and ancient social acceptability. It is an ancient social habit. So now you're juxtaposing, you're using one triangle to manage the other triangle. You see, that is the trap in which our ruling elite is. But the realities on the ground realities are Americans now more or less going into their laga. British, you've seen what your European unity in total disarray. What is happening is that instead of the Quad that we are supposed to be, no one talks about the Quad anymore, because the Quad that has taken over are the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians and Pakistan and others in the rim of Afghanistan, where we have to be. And it was a good initiative that just the other day, the Prime Minister spoke to 4 or 5 leaders of Central Asian republics, who in fact, remember that for 2 years, we've had the following guests at our 26th January parade. Last year, we had Mr. Bolsonaro of Brazil, who was in all sorts of trouble at home, legally and otherwise. He will not be returned. This year, we had invited 5 leaders from Central Asia, not Pakistan, not Iran, but all the others. They did not come. The reason was COVID. So we had, this is the first, I hope, this is the first time that our Republic Day was celebrated, observed, without any VIP. New things are happening. Thank you very much.